It's week 11 time, one game in the books. The Eagles slammed the door on the Washington Commanders, and we're making picks for the rest of the week 11 schedule. And today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we appreciate all the new listeners jumping in with us this season on Peacock and Williamson. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel. Special offer for our listeners with FanDuel, because right now, place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And let's talk a little bit about this Thursday nighter with the kickoff week 11 is a really good one in the NFC East, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles. And I put in the caption, Matt, the Eagles slammed the door on the Commanders, because that's what happened in the fourth quarter of this football game, and it was a close one. And at times it looked like, okay, who's going to win this game? The Washington Commanders jumped out to the early lead and then kind of fell asleep, it seemed like, at the wheel in this game. And the Eagles with Saquon Barkley came charging in the fourth quarter, 24th quarter points. Saquon Barkley's really been phenomenal this season all year long, but really in the second halves of games he's shown up. But the big question here beyond this week, with now the 7-4 Commanders and the 8-2 Eagles, so getting a couple more in the loss column there is huge for Philadelphia in the AFC, sticking to those Commanders. But when it comes to the Washington Commanders, did they not only slam the door in the fourth quarter on the Commanders this week, sort of slammed the door on the Commanders this season in a way that it's like, okay, Commanders, cute story so far, but you're not ready to roam the big boys quite yet. We saw the Commanders lose to the Eagles this week, and then another, clear playoff caliber team in the Pittsburgh Steelers last week.
I lean that way. Again, I think even if the second half of the season, if this is their first losing streak, and if they start to crumble, this is already a successful year. I never quite felt they were a contender, a top 7 or 8 type of team. Like I would have Green Bay and San Francisco in the NFC ahead of them for sure. But we'll see. I'm really curious with a long week, a semi-bye. How do they respond to a 2-game losing streak? Do they rebound and come back and start looking sharp again? Can they get Daniels in more of a playmaker mode? Both these teams bottled him up pretty well, and he looked a little out of sorts all night last night. And I do want to talk about this Eagles defense. But I also felt that some of it was explainable for the team in that super short week after a really physical game against Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden the dam breaks in the fourth quarter. That's not uncommon throughout the season. So I can kind of write a story that's, paints them in a better light, but I'd be a little concerned. I think they're going to the playoffs, but I would still be a little concerned. It looks like Eagles are firmly in charge of that division, and should be, because they're playing at a really high level. And I was just on with Wig doing Locked On NFL. And we were talking about this Eagles defense, and these 2 rookie corners have done magnificent work. We didn't hear from McLaurin basically at all. And then he brought up, we started talking about the linebackers too. He mentioned the Kobe Dean and how he's coming into his own. And then I brought up Zach Bond. Like, this guy makes plays all over the place. But really, all those things are lovely. Jalen Carter is an utter superstar. He is on pace to be Chris Jones.
By the way, rookie cornerbacks for the Eagles. Quinyon Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken, I think had 1 target and 0 catches allowed.
Wow.
And then Cooper DeJean, we had talked earlier this week with the Diamador Lenore contract and guys who are valuable to play in the nickel on third downs, and Cooper DeJean falling into the second round. Brian Branch fell into the second round of the draft the year before. And the Eagles and smart teams like the Lions are taking advantage of some of those players and are really strong now in that area. And it was clearly the need for the Eagles on the back end of their defense this offseason, and they hit it twice in the draft. And I think they nailed both of those picks. CJ Gardner-Johnson making plays on the back end, and he's already that guy that can kind of play in the nickel and do a lot for defense. So, varied skill sets along this Philadelphia Eagles defense with Bond and Dean and Smith. And you mentioned, Jalen Carter coming on, and, we already knew how talented he was, probably the most talented player in his draft, as long as he's continuing. Brandon Graham with the gray hair and still going too. And love that. One win for the old guys there too, as well. So phenomenal. Then you look at the other side, like the Washington Commanders could really use Lattimore instead of, Noah Igbenogany out there too. They're coming up a little bit short on the talent side when you see them play against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles and what they've built on their defense.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and their roster's their record's better than their roster. I mean, I think especially going into this 2-game losing streak. Last nugget too for me is you missed 2 field goals. I mean, those are turnovers, and you overcame that. I mean, there's not a lot of faith in kickers in this game. I wasn't blown away with either quarterback. It was kind of a slog for much of the game until we hit the fourth quarter. And then back to those linebackers real quick. We know Howie Roseman traditionally, and maybe his tune has changed. We'll find safeties. We'll find linebackers. Just give me every D lineman I can possibly get, and that was a problem last year. Well, it isn't anymore.
We'll find running backs. Like,
right.
Strengthen those too. And okay, now you're cooking a little bit. We throw in Saquon Barkley and 2 top 50 draft picks. So Eagles looking good and hitting their stride at a good time now and commanding 8-2 lead atop the NFC East. And you mentioned Hurts and Daniels. My last note here on Daniels is, there's a little bit of a blueprint now. And we've seen it with the way that the Steelers played Daniels and the Eagles, and teams are going to try to bottle them up. And now it's time for the, Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels. And it's time for them to get together and make adjustments to the adjustments that the league is making to a young quarterback, which is part of the progression of the offense, part of the progression of a young quarterback in the NFL too.
Yeah. And again, the long week might come at a good time for him for that.
Absolutely. Okay. Next, we're going to get into our picks for the rest of week 11. We already made our 6-pack of picks. And so if you've already heard that episode, I'm just going to run through those so you know what picks we made for all of the games this week in week 11. And if you want our reasonings and you haven't heard that episode yet from Wednesday, go back and check that one out. We both have the Pittsburgh Steelers getting 3 points, hosting the Baltimore Ravens. We both have the Green Bay Packers giving up 6 points at the Chicago Bears. You have Detroit giving up 13.5. I took Jacksonville. Don't love it, but a couple touchdowns. Jacksonville look like a football team. Let's see. Cincinnati. We both have Cincinnati. Is that right? I didn't even write that one down.
I have the Chargers. I think they're going to push them around.
You have the Chargers, I believe, in that one, if I'm not mistaken, but I didn't write it down. Then I have the New York Jets. You have the I have the Indianapolis Colts getting 4 at the New York Jets. So I think the Jets are opposite. You have the Colts getting 4.
I got the Colts in that one.
I have the New York Jets giving up 4, hosting the Indianapolis Colts. So that was from our 6-pack of picks, and we'll make the rest of our picks now for week 11. Mahomes Allen. Oh, that one's always a good one. We'll get into that next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month, when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to those overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Ditched those overpriced wireless plans with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month for those 3 months. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. In the next segment of this episode of Peacock and Williamson, sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All of the lines we reference on today's episode and all episodes of Peacock and Williamson and throughout the Locked On Podcast Network are brought to you by FanDuel. And you can play all those weekly lines at FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of a game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more are all on the very same page where you're placing your bets at FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Matt. So we are looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, and they are on the road at the Buffalo Bills. This is a good one. This is the best one of the week. We get a little more Mahomes versus Allen. Seen a lot of fireworks with this matchup in the past. We might see this again in the playoffs, but the Chiefs right now isn't the high-flying offense to have one of those, 48-45 games against the Buffalo Bills right now. But this is 9-0 at 8-2. The Buffalo Bills favored by 2 points at home against those Kansas City Chiefs.
I kind of feel like if anyone other than the Chiefs is going to get the #1 seed in the bye in the AFC, they need Buffalo to win this game. You know what I mean? Like, we got to at least get them one loss to a playoff caliber team here sooner than later. I don't know who wins, but if you're going to give me points for the undefeated team in a big game, I'm going to take it. And I think the Chiefs defense is potentially the best unit of the four, although I don't see a lot of weaknesses, of any of the four units, to be honest with you. My pick worries me in that Rousseau and those edge rushers could beat up on those tackles. I think the Chiefs tackles are a real problem, but the Chiefs are very content to just nickel and dime it down the field. And that's kind of the way the Bills play defense. And I think that they'll control the time of possession and be able to do that.
And then in the fourth quarter, it's close, and all of a sudden you get boop, 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 and a couple of touchdowns from each quarterback, and it kind of just gets over the 45 and a half over. But I'm with you. Patrick Mahomes is what was it, 12-1, 15-1, something like that against the spread when they're underdogs. Like the Chiefs underdog is the easiest money that at this point is an auto take for me. So I'm going to take the points and take the Kansas City Chiefs on the road of the Buffalo Bills, even though the line is probably a good line, right? With the Buffalo Bills at home favored by a couple of points, which means, maybe even Chiefs are favored by 1 in a neutral site. I think it's going to be a really good game. Can't wait to watch this one. But in the end, the Chiefs, I expect them to do what they do, because this is what they always do, is they just win by enough, win by a little bit. Whatever the game calls for is what the Chiefs do, and go win the football game. And they've done it against the Bills in the past. And I don't know why we should expect anything different at this point. Even though it's certainly possible for the Buffalo Bills to win this, and I can see why they would be favored, but give me the Kansas City Chiefs in the points always.
2 injury notes, though. Kincaid has been ruled out, and it seems like their pass catchers in general are getting really thin. And Harrison Butker is out he's going to be on IR for the next 4 weeks. And it's a big deal. I mean, because they're not beating teams by 10. I mean, if you all of a sudden a couple kicks go wide right as opposed to down the middle, that could be a significant move.
Right. If you're winning by 3, a field goal kicker becomes pretty important. And Cooper is going to play right, but he's been banged up as well for the
I think so. Yes.
Might be a smart Khalil Shakir, middle of the field player in your fantasy leagues for Josh Allen in this game.
He's like the one to rely on at the moment, it seems like.
We've got let's go to Monday night really quick. It is the Houston Texans at the Dallas Cowboys, and no Dak Prescott. He's had surgery. He is done for the year. And so those Houston Texans right now with this 3-6 Dallas Cowboys team, the Texans are favored by 7.5 points on the road Monday night. I'm sure they expected a much different game with this Texas showdown when they scheduled this one on Monday night. Houston Texans favored by 7.5 at the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, this has definitely lost some luster, especially on the Big D side. And I think and I know you do too, we've talked about it, the Cowboys are shot. I also think Cooper Rush might be semi-respectable, though. Like last game, he was terrible. We've seen enough of them that maybe CD Lamb is still fantasy relevant. Like, I don't know that it'll be Miami bad when Tua went out, and all of a sudden you're the worst offense in the league. That being said, I'm laying the points. I bet Cowboy fans could get kind of ugly and start turning against the coaching staff and the whole situation. And I also think Houston's in a pretty good place to get Nico Collins back and Will Anderson and maybe right some things on that offensive line, make Stroud start to look like Stroud again. I think the second half of the season could go a little better for Houston.
I'm going to take the Cowboys. And I'm going to take those home dog points, and I think Cooper Rush can keep things near as respectable as you can with where the Cowboys are at right now. And the tech, it's partially because I think the drop as far as point spreads go might not be that dramatic for Cooper Rush. We've seen them win games with Cooper Rush in the past. Just go through and don't do too much and play within the offense and feed CD Lamb as much as possible. And then the Texans haven't been that team to blow people out either. And so we'll see if they can take advantage of that right now. And it's obviously in Dallas. So you get a little bump there for the Dallas Cowboys. So I could see this being a Texans win by a touchdown, which is still not enough to cover the points. So 7.5 points. I'm gonna take the points. I'm taking a lot of points this week, and I might regret it later for some bad teams, but we'll see how it goes.
I like it. I mean, that hook is a little bit tricky, I mean, they could come back and backdoor cover this thing.
The Atlanta Falcons are at the Denver Broncos. 6-4 Falcons trying to do their thing in their division. The Denver Broncos trying not to fall too far behind at 5-5 in their division. Looking up at a couple teams in the AFC West, and you got to win these games if you're the Denver Broncos if you want to stay relevant and stay in that wild card hunt and not fall below 500. And for the Falcons, they need to prove to the league that they're ready to run away with this division in the NFC South. Falcons at Broncos, Denver at home, favored by 2.
I don't feel confident about this game, but I'm going to take the home team. NFC teams have rarely played in this altitude. I think that could, be a factor late in the game. But frankly, I'm just really down on Atlanta's defense, especially their front, especially their pass rush. And I think Denver in the trenches are hard to play against, and their quarterback seems to be improving. So I don't think it's going to be beautiful. I'm not going to bet the ranch on it, but I'm going to take the home team here.
I'm really annoyed that Denver is favored because I wanted to get points and pick the Denver Broncos at home against the Falcons because I feel like that's kind of how the line should be. So I really hate this one. I'm going to reluctantly pick the Falcons because I think they're a better overall football team. And I'm getting points with that. But one factor I don't like is you laid it out there, Denver Broncos at home in the altitude. But the Falcons have no pass rush. And the young quarterback, like a lot of young quarterbacks on Denver's side, is much better when he's not getting pressure. So if you're not pressuring the opposing team's quarterback, that's a good recipe for to lose a football game. So find some pressure somehow, get some mistakes from the young quarterback, and then that's a path to Falcons victory.
They've been trying to get a pass rush, I feel like, my whole life. I mean, Judon's not the answer. I mean, what are you going to do?
It's the Chicago Bears quarterback curse and the Atlanta Falcons pass rush curse.
Yep, it's weird. Yeah.
All right, next we want to talk Seattle Seahawks. They are at the San Francisco 49ers in an NFC West showdown. Browns, Saints, and more picks from around the NFL in Week 11. Next. The final segment of today's program is sponsored by Hillsdale College, and time is our most precious commodity. So don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including history, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these things in school? Maybe not. Have you brushed up on these recently? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. And time and technology has changed, but in history, it has not changed. In the great works of literature, those words are still written. So all of Hillsdale courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever, tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, and just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, a lot of good matchups here in week 11. Let's go to, this is really important for the Seattle Seahawks. And the 49ers are 5-4 now. They've won their back-to-back games for the first time this season. It's kind of been one step forward, one step back for both of these teams in the NFC West. But now with both of these teams looking up the Arizona Cardinals and the wild card getting further and further away, you got to win the West if you're these two teams. And if you're the Seattle Seahawks, who already lost once to the 49ers, it'd be pretty devastating to fall multiple games below 500 and lose another conference game, lose another division game, and be multiple games behind two teams in the NFC West. And the 49ers are favored by 6.5 at home against those Seahawks.
I think this might be a game when we look back on the season and say, that's when Seattle started to slip out of the division race. And that's when San Francisco started to assert themselves as the big brother in the West. We're used to winning this division. We go to Super Bowls. We're the better football team. Second half of the season, we have McCaffrey. How are you going to block Bosa? I could see this being a statement win by 2 touchdowns. So I feel very strong that your Niners win this one big.
I like the Niners to win this, but they haven't put together, a game in all 3 phases and a game for all 4 quarters all season long. And so I'm still waiting to see that from the 49ers. And they've got multiple players banged up. Christian McCaffrey was out there classic Kyle Shanahan. I tried to tell people, we put the over-under at 1.5 carries for Jordan Mason after Christian McCaffrey came back last week. He got 1 carry. He hit the under on the 1.5. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to take it easy with Christian McCaffrey. He took like 4 plays off. And so, and he's still questionable coming into this week. I mean, you hope they don't run him into the ground so quickly coming back off of injury. Bosa's dealing with an injury, not practicing so far this week. Think he's probably going to play. Kittle. There's just a lot of guys that are banged up. Juwan Jennings as well. So they're still a banged up football team, even though they were coming off a bye last week and got someone like Christian McCaffrey back. So that's something to monitor as well, while the Seahawks are actually getting healthier. And they've just been the worst offensive line on the right side in the league this year, the Seahawks. But they're going to get Abraham Lucas back. And his first game back, he's got a big challenge if Bosa does play, and I think he is going to play. But that's going to help them tremendously because the Seahawks haven't been able to run the ball, and they've been put in 3rd and longs, and so they're just throwing the ball a ton. And it's a bad recipe if your line's bad because you can't run, and then you can't protect your quarterback on 3rd and long. And so if Lucas helps that, and last time these two teams played, it was a pretty easy 49ers win. Even though some goofy stuff happened to keep the scoreboard a little closer than the game actually looked. But the Seahawks didn't have their defensive lineman either. Murphy was out, and Mafe was out, and Hall was out, and those guys are back. And so I think it might be a little bit different game. Seahawks back against the wall. All that said, I like the 49ers to win, but 6.5 is enough points to take the points with the Seahawks to keep this one within a couple of field goals potentially. And it might come down to special teams, which both teams have kind of screwed up this year.
2 nuggets. So Mason now is probably droppable in fantasy, right? I mean, unless you're pure handcuff only.
Handcuff, yep.
Okay. I like that we have differed on quite a few picks. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm gaining on you. So you better look out this week.
If I really wanted to play defense and keep this close, I would have been picking more picks that Matt Williamson picks because I jumped out to an early lead this year, but he's coming back strong, and my picks have not been as strong the last few weeks. So I got to come back stronger, but I like it's more fun when we have different picks.
Maybe I'll make you pick first on some of these when we come down the home stretch.
That's true. Yeah. The advantage of getting to choose differently from you, even though that's not what I do. I don't take advantage of it.
No, I know.
Where are we at here? How about the Raiders? The Las Vegas Raiders at 2-7 are at the 3-6 Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins better win this game. They're favored by 7. If you can't beat the Raiders, that's a bad sign for you. But the Dolphins have played like a team that can't beat the Raiders a lot of times this year and haven't been able to beat a lot of teams at 3-6 this year. Gardner Minshew is going to start. It's not a good sign when you're the Raiders and every week you have to say who your starting quarterback is going to be. We know who the starting quarterback is going to be for the Dolphins. When's this offense going to start looking like the Miami Dolphins offense that we expected this year is my big question.
I think this week. I think the defense played really well and got after Stafford and should be able to do the same to Minshew. And I think they'll get some short fields. And I really like how Tua's played since he's been back. So I kind of feel like they've been knocking on the door of being that explosive offense. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be a 60-point type of offense like they were last year against Denver, but I do feel pretty confident in their building, no weather restrictions, that they win this game going away.
Yeah, I like it too. I'm going to give up those 7 points and think the Miami Dolphins can win big. And even if it's just a blip, you feel a lot better about their offense and their football team and getting their 4th win of the year against the Las Vegas Raiders here this week. I have a question for you, and it stems from this. And there's 4 teams on a bye this week. We've already done our 6 packs. We have a little extra time today. Giants, Cardinals, Bucks, and Panthers are all on a bye. I have a conundrum, really important matchup in my fantasy league this week, Matt. And I got a lot of wide receivers on my team. Running back has been tough for me this year, but I had Eckler, and that was a nice score for me this week on Thursday night. So running back, I'm feeling okay about. But I've got 3 wide receivers that I could plug into my lineup, and I can't decide between Waddle, who's been awful for me this year, of the Dolphins, Odunze with a new offensive coordinator that I think could be one of the things that they do offensively now is focus on getting the ball to the rookie wide receiver. Right now I have Odunze in pencil in my starting lineup, or in that same game, Packers wide receiver Christian Watson. I could play any 3 of those wide receivers. Which
just
one?
one?
Would you pick this week? I get one of those 3, and I already have Pickens going, and I already have Garrett Wilson going for me.
Yeah, those 2 are clear. I'm very invested in Waddle, and frankly, I'm going back and forth between Waddle and Nuke Hopkins in my league. And most people keep telling me Hopkins, but I think Miami blows up on offense today. I probably will go Hopkins, but of your 3 options, I'm pretty confident that Waddle's that guy. I mean, he started strong last week, but I know he's frustrating. Trust me, I own him in a lot of spots.
Yeah, you don't buy my theory of new offensive coordinators going to make it a priority to get the ball into Odunze's hands more in the second half of the year?
Slightly, but I wouldn't put my money on it, hoping that the Bears all of a sudden get it right and know how to pass block, and Caleb Williams gets the ball out of his hands all of a sudden in 1 week's time, and all those things.
All right,
I would like to see less Keenan Allen if I was a Bears fan, though, and more Odunze.
I drafted Waddle for a reason, and this would be a great week to plug him in, and it gives me a good opportunity to give you hell about it if he doesn't play well. And
right. It's a no-win situation. No one's going to be like, thanks, Matt.
All right, I'm going to go Waddle then. Thank you. Okay. And now I have a scapegoat if it doesn't work out for me.
So people can chime in. Waddle versus Hopkins is a tough one for me.
Yeah.
Making my brain hurt.
My natural instinct is to lean away from Waddle. But again, you made a good argument that this is one of the best weeks to actually play Waddle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you don't want to do the thing where they score 50 points and you have Waddle on your bench.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got the Browns at the Saints. The Cleveland Browns at 2-7. At the 3-7 Saints. The Saints came out and won a football game last week. They're only favored by 1 here against the Cleveland Browns. I feel like that's a little bit of a mistake potentially with the way these 2 teams have gone recently and all season long.
I don't like this game at all. I'm going to take the Browns, and I just think Winston's such an emotional player that the revenge game thing that I often joke about might matter in this case, but more so, I'm not big on betting on Carr in any way, shape, or form when I think he's going to be under pressure. And I think Garrett, at a minimum, should disrupt them a lot. And I have a hard time banking on Valdez-Scantling and the dudes I'd never heard of catching passes last week.
I'm going to take the Saints, as I just mentioned. I like them better at home. They've played better most recently. Neither one of these teams has played very good all season long. 5 combined wins and 14 combined losses is good evidence of that. I hate this game, and I'm going to take the Saints. Take home team here.
I kind of hate Rams Patriots too, by the way. I don't think we've talked about that one. I hate that one a lot.
What do you do with Rams Patriots? Rams favored by 4.5
in New England. I just hate that it's in New England. Far, and weather's probably be wet and yucky, and Stafford's been struggling a little bit. I'm taking the home points just because I think Drake May makes plays. I really like Drake May.
I think the Rams blip was just that earlier this year, and I think they are going to fall off. But I think they can put up points against the New England Patriots right now in that defense. And I don't like how many points they're favored by, but I'm still going to take the Rams to go beat the Patriots in New England, even though the Patriots looked good last week. And again, yeah,
the bet I'm least confident in this week is that one. The Rams could win by 20.
Yeah, and I'm betting on that. I'm betting on Stafford going big.
Yeah, I'm staying far away.
Last one here is the Minnesota Vikings at the Tennessee Titans. The 7-2 Vikes at the 2-7 Titans. Minnesota favored by 6 points on the road.
Yeah, I'm starting to get concerned about Darnold, that he is who he is. And I think the Titans defense is respectable. They're featuring Ridley since the Hopkins trade. So there's Levis, I actually thought played a little better last week. I mean, if I'm going to crush him when he's down, I should at least give him a pat on the butt when he's playing a little better. I think the Vikings are just so much better coached and have so much more talent. And I think Flores puts Levis in a blender. And when we see pick sixes and goofy stuff, I'll take the Vikes.
And I'm with you. I'm going to take the Vikes. I'm going to give up the points here. You just hope Darnold didn't fall into his old Darnold self, because all of a sudden he's keeping up to 10 interceptions on the year now, 3 picks last week. Talking about pick sixes, they can't start going the other way if you're trying to beat a team by a touchdown here. If you're the Vikings on the road, but I am going to take the Vikings and think that Darnold doesn't throw a handful of interceptions in this game.
You think you get back to running the ball. I know Aaron Jones is questionable, but I think the Vikings are just a much more trustworthy team.
Yeah, which is why they're favored by 6 on the road.
Yeah,
and they should be, in my opinion.
They should be.
They're not quite that strong team that they were earlier on in the year. Like, they're starting to see some chinks in the armor for sure for the Minnesota Vikings right now.
Super quick, BP. Let's go back to the first thing we talked about today. If you were to power rank the Vikes and Commanders, they'd be right next to each other for me.
Oh, they would be very tight. Yeah. And similarly, like, you start off hot and then you're like, okay, maybe they're not quite as good as those teams in their division, those teams that, they're going to have
still a good story.
Like, they would be underdogs at home in the playoffs against like a 7 seed 49ers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but they could get in and the years of success, and both will be in the coach of the year conversation. And,
that is our picks for week 11. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. And of course, Matt and I will be back Monday to break all of the NFL week 11 action down right here. Peacock and Williamson.